Okay, so for this video we're going to do a little bit of wedge trap and backhand, which is a cycle into itself from classical WhoBud training. This video is also a companion to the 3 styles of generator WhoBud video that Colin and I did recently. This will be something that can act as yet another kind of generator, another way to feed. It's also a switch, a way to transition from a right side feed to a left side feed without breaking your flow in WhoBud. So it's extremely clever. It's very versatile just within WhoBud itself. It's very versatile in the greater spectrum of martial art because you'll see variations of it in several different arts. And then as a skill development tool, I think it's a really great way to develop some sensitivity, to get used to what really quality structure and economical movement looks like in trapping. Wedge trap backhand. We'll start this with the classical WhoBud wedge trap backhand cycle that we do in the MKG method. And then from there, we'll connect that and plug it into our standard WhoBud flow. So this is going to start with me feeding a backhand line. And with the mirrored side of the body, he picks it up with his palm on my forearm. You could call this maybe sector 2, middle of the forearm, right where it kind of tapers. So I feed this and he stops it, right? He's stopping it on the center line. And I'm gonna wedge my other arm in beneath. It's just a slight clearing motion that way. I'm not manipulating this. I'm definitely not moving it past that center line. I'm just reoccupying this space on the other side of his arm and moving this hand out of the way and freeing this one up. So he catches my backhand motion. I wedge and replace, and I trap and backhand on that side. Right? Again, he catches, so I replace and I trap and backhand. It's as if I'm going, okay, I want to hit him with a backhand motion, and he stopped me, so I'm going to have to backhand him with my other hand. Okay, fine, good enough for me. So when he stops it, I replace and get him on that side. It's important that I remember here that when I wedge this off, that I retract this hand like that. It's just a quick bump like that to replace to the other side. If I hang out here like this and I don't remember to move this hand, he's going to push down and I've trapped myself effectively. Now I'm in trouble, right? So just as a good developmental habit, I want to get used to right away doing this correctly, wedge and replace. Now this is lined up for that pak sao or trapping hand or suppression motion towards the forearm. This backhand, an important thing to keep in mind as a beginner so you get this good habit going right away. Where a lot of us get this wrong is when we trap, we retract, we load up that backhand. So you think, well, maybe this doesn't feel like enough. I want to really get this sort of, all to be this backhand turnover like that. Cool, it looks great, it feels good, but once I retract, well, we're 50-50. He could hit me or I could hit him. Our hands are about equal distance from one another, right? So I didn't really change this set at all in my favor. I went 1, 2, I'm halfway to Colin, and by the time I trap and could be all the way to Colin, I say, well, instead I'm going to trap and back up and start over again. Again, we want to limit his ability to hit us and develop some sort of quick habitual ways to economically get in there and hit him first. So that means that as just a development tool alone without any cycle, this is kind of a clever little thing to get used to doing so that you can get these hands moving kind of slick, kind of fast, but with purpose. Now, he stopped my backhand with his hand. If I wedge, trap, and backhand, he stops this one. Can you guess where we're going? Right, so look at this. Boom. I'm so close to his arm, I can almost touch it. So we know that's the line. I'm going to shoot this up and wedge this one, remembering to retract, trap, and backhand. So I give him a right one, a left one, and a right one. Cool. Again, it's not a bad skill to develop, saying I'm going to move from one side of the body to the other this way. Implementing this in your knife work, in your close range, if you're in like a hand pummeling situation, you have to be able to move limbs around. These are great skills, so you can train them in isolation this way. So isolating the first one, Second one was he picks this up, so I repeat the motion on the other side, wedge trap and backhand. Okay, so full integration means we're going to make a complete unbroken circuit or cycle out of this. Hence the name wedge trap and backhand cycle. The trick is for him to remember to cycle his hands through. After one pass on both hands, or on both sides, his hands are going to be down if he doesn't think to move them. So if he doesn't move his hands to catch these, I suppress one and then the other. Well, that's great trapping because his hands are left down here and I've got the opportunity to get some work done, but that doesn't create a cycle. So I start on whatever side, we've been using the right, wedge, trap, and backhand, and he catches. Now as soon as I deviate from this hand, he's going to cycle his hand through. As the receiver, all you're doing is this. And he just cycles his hand towards his sternum and then pushes it out on the center line to catch this. Really simple. Right? So I have a backhand motion, I wedge, trap, and backhand. Then I wedge this one, trap, and backhand. Oh, he caught it? Fine, I'm going to wedge this one. Trap and backhand. Oh, you think you're clever, right? I'm going to hit you on this side. Oh, fine, I'll hit you on this side, on this side, on this side. And so it goes that you just continue to wedge, trap, and backhand because the wedging and the trapping is as significant as the backhand. We tend to focus on the attack portion of any particular drill, which makes sense. You're thinking, well, I want to try and hit home. I want to get this thing in there. Great. But for a cycle, for a flow drill, it's really the music between the notes is an expression that's good here, right? It's the things that happen along the way that the lesson really lives inside of. Usually in class, the way we would do this is about a 10 count. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now look at his position. If he lifts, Colin can trap and backhand. Trap and backhand. Wedge, trap, backhand. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I lift, trap, backhand. 2, 3, 4. So it's completely unbroken the whole time. There's no gaps. There's no separation. We're sticking and unsticking in flow together nonstop the entire drill. Then the last way I would look at doing just this cycle is playing with speed a little bit. We'll do 20 beats per. So I might start this 1, 2, 3, slow and steady rhythm like a train leaving the station. That's how Guru Rick always says it. I think it's a fantastic way to think about it. Train leaving the station. So it doesn't start off at speed. It chugs along, picking up speed. So doing like a 20 count is good because that will give you the opportunity to pick up the pace as you go through. So once we hit the point where it breaks down, that's when we stop. Now he goes backhand, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, picks up the pace on his own. So when we plug this wedge trap and backhand motion into our regular WhoBud, we'll look at this angle 1 feed because backhand is nothing if not angle 2, right? Catch, lift, pat, right? That's the 3 beats for this WhoBud generator. After catch, lift, pat, it's feed, isn't it? And that feed is angle 1. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So when it comes time for me to feed, instead of feeding the 1, I'm going to feed the 2 here. So that means it's catch, lift, pat, and backhand. So I go from the 1 here to the 2. He's using the palm to catch it just like in the cycle. Now we can switch to this game. And I can say, okay, I'm going to take a few reps here. Right? And the longer I take, the more I'm just kind of stealing his chance to do some fun stuff too. So you take, half a dozen little quick reps. And then when I feed trap and backhand, instead of wedge, trap, backhand, I do wedge, trap, forehand, and we're back in it. So again, that looks like angle 1 to angle 1 feed, or the sort of downward vertical hammer fist feed. And I go catch, lift, pat, and backhand instead, wedge trap backhand, wedge trap backhand. And we're off and running back into it. Okay, so last thing with this is that in the MKG method, we use this wedge trap and backhand, 2 beats of the wedge trap and backhand as a switch so that you go from feeding on the right side to feeding on the left side. So let's look at that. So I'm feeding the angle 1, and he is as well, obviously. So this downward forehand feed. I catch, lift, pat, and backhand, wedge. That was 1 backhand motion. Wedge, trap, and backhand a second time. Right? Now what we did before is I continued wedge, trap, backhand. Yeah? But if instead of doing that, I let him lift, he does wedge, trap. Look at, he's feeding forehand motion with his left, angle 1. Now we're left to left. So that again, starting on the right side, we're feeding classic standard WhoBud generator. And when I'm ready, I say, okay, next time I feed, I'm going to feed a backhand, an angle 2. Catch, lift, pat, backhand. That was 1 backhand. There's going to be 2. I wedge, trap, and backhand. That's 2 backhands. If I let my partner lift, he pats down, and now we're back in it, but we're on the left side. So now I could do it from the left. So instead of feeding the angle 1 here now with the left, I go backhand once, wedge, trap, backhand twice. He lifts out, pats down, and we're right to right again. So effective switch from one side to the other without breaking flow, without hardly breaking rhythm. Okay, so that's backhand, wedge, trap, and backhand, wedge, trap, and backhand as a cycle, responding, center line catches. You're not grasping, you're just letting the forearm run into your palm. That's it. It's very passive, very simple. Then taking that motion and plugging it into WhoBud, either as a way to change the nature of the flow or to switch from one side of the body to the other. And game is kind of a favorite for the whole group, so we enjoy it. I hope you did too. Try it out. As always, go slow, take your time. This kind of finesse, small motion, the emphasis should be on structure, right? Pressure, momentum. Those are the important parts of your trapping here. So trying to just power your way through it or start blitzing too early, right? Too fast, too soon. You're really gonna steal a lot of the lessons from yourself. So try to develop the patience with it, to take your time, get used to how this thing moves and how you move with another body, and you're gonna be further along than you already think. Thank you, Colin, for helping out, and thanks for watching.